Welcome, everyone, again to the True Safety Podcast. Becca and I are a little giddy this morning talking about what it all takes to be here. I shared with her that my laptop is missing at the house, and we're just going to record with my phone today because I am so excited for this conversation. So excuse me if you see me kind of swiping there you go. I can see you now, Bec. But welcome everyone to Bec Corvin with ProTect-All Solutions. We are here for a part 2 series of mind-body safety conversation. And that's sort of a tagline, a mantra that came from Bec Corvin. Bec, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing this morning? Hopefully better than me.
I'm doing well. I was teaching an OSHA class this morning, part of an OSHA class. So this is like my second wind. And I think you and I are on the same vibe, whatever it is.
Oh my gosh. Good. Well, this is, your part 2. You're already in the OSHA regs this morning. So we'll go beyond that. And I'm so excited to just tell you about something that happened earlier this week. So I'll bring you up to speed. So these last couple weeks since our conversation, really, that had to have been a few months ago, which it doesn't seem like a few months ago, but picking up from our last conversation about this whole mind-body safety, right? And how much is mental health talked about in the workplace. And so this has been, if you're a safety professional and you're connected with other safety professionals on LinkedIn, you will know that this is starting to become a conversation more than it ever has been. But I'll share with you that, so I recently interviewed a few mental health facilities, counseling facilities in our community. And I was like, hey, I asked this girl that worked for one counseling facility. They have 4 locations. And I said, hey, what does the average oil and gas construction worker deal with that you see personally at your facility? What is the number one thing that they're struggling with? And she goes, Apolonia, that's hands down anger management, stress. And anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I'm probably like you, where I laughed because I'm like, I grew up in oil and gas. I grew up around trade workers, and I'm like, yes, like 1000% did I see those 3 emotions, feel those emotions when your family or your dad is experiencing those things, you feel those things. And I said, that is no duh. Like that made so much. When I tell you that, what runs through your mind with how many oil and gas workers you work around construction? How many people are you working with that deal with anger, stress, and anxiety in this field?
It doesn't surprise me at all. And I'll expand it a little bit and challenge, all of us that's here and listening. My belief is that if you're human, you're dealing with it. You can call it what you want. You can pretend that, you're able to kind of like get through the day and not let it bother you. But more and more research and science and whatever it is that's going to convince people outside of like just having that knowing is coming to the forefront. And we just need to normalize it. Like it's part of this life to be stressed and have anxiety and be frustrated. But what we're, talking about and trying to do is to normalize it, to give people a better way to cope with it and not think that they're so alone. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And so tell me what you think about this. So I took that information and I was like, I love the point you made. We're humans are dealing with those emotions and how it connects with what we do as safety professionals is, all right, what do we do with that information? So I'm thinking this is the unseen hazard in the workplace, right? And so I brought this to our Colorado OSHA training institution at Rocky Mountain Education Center. And they were like, yes, Apolonia, like OSHA stops at the recognized hazards. And we are not taking the conversation further with the unseen hazards of stress, depression, anger. Like that one I just really resonated with just because well, I'll save that. But so then I'm talking to this industry expert, construction, and been in the industry 25 plus years. And he was just mentioning, yeah, Apolonia. I said, what do you think about these emotions? And he was like, yes, so many times, oftentimes if you're the male, let's just say, and you have all these stressors going on, and even in the post-COVID era, you might be dealing with so much bottled up stress at the work, at home, and you're not able to, maybe you don't have a support system at home, or you don't feel appreciated or whatever it is. And then you're out on the job site and there's no one to talk to. There's no one to vent to. He was like, I know he said, this might be such future, these might be future aspirations. He said, but do you ever see the workplace providing resources to workers like counseling, where it's not counseling, like I'm here to fix you, you're broken.
Right.
But do you ever see employers in the future providing a resource to just talk? And is that a solution? I mean, I just had this conversation this week. I don't know what your thoughts are about that, or how do we combat all this?
Yeah. So that's been part of my mission is building compassion and empathy into the workplace, not just into the safety side of it, but it's compassionate safety. It's empathetic management, it's emotional intelligence. So to answer your question, do I foresee companies doing this? No, because they're already doing it. There are already companies that are providing mentorship and professional services to their employees, and they're taking mental health seriously, not just from that proactive standpoint, but as a tool, making it a normal conversation, bringing it from the top down. But you have to believe in it. You have to commit to it. You have to allocate resources to it. And similar to how there's this big, the big talk, like you have a workplace culture, you have a safety culture, and all the safety people are like, listen, it's just a culture. It's the same thing with this. We can't continue to just have a leadership track, a safety professional track. This is what our employees get. Something that came to me, honestly, just like in the past 24 hours is like, it's superimposed. Like you have to have all of this superimposed together. So while they might be all separate and developed by different experts and different people or different departments or whatever, they have to be able to lay on top of each other so that they don't affect each other, but they enhance each other. Like that, I've been trying to find a way to articulate what I'm trying to get out to people and how I'm trying to serve people with a safety background and a mindfulness background, And I think that that's going to be the ticket for explanation, because we have so many people wondering, we have our engineers and we have our quality and we have our safety and we have our, frontline workers, and then we have our customers to consider. And, we have all these layers and they're not talking to each other, from an operational standpoint. So when we can look at it and say, instead, like, are employers going to begin providing professional counseling services or mental health, emotional services to their employees? I guess the question I would ask is, how can we build it into how our setup already is so that it is superimposed in the system that we have? Maybe even utilizing resources and people and things like that we already have access to as well. But yeah, they're already doing it. Some are already doing it, and it's amazing.
Wow. What does it look like? Just because I don't have any connections with companies, or maybe these larger corporations, or maybe are they medium-sized companies? Are they big companies with big budgets? Who's doing it? And maybe if you don't have the company name off the top of your head, that's fine. And then what does it look like? That way our listeners like me are thinking, what does it look like? And how can a company get started with something like that?
Well, I would say that the easiest thing to start with is to take a look at your pre-existing setup with your insurance companies.
Okay.
A lot of them, we've all heard about the employee assistance programs and our drug testing policies. We don't realize that it's more than just a recovery path. Employee assistance programs, you have access to all kinds of experts, whether it's like attorneys or counselors or we talk about suicide prevention. I was just on OSHA's website the other day, and they have this whole section allocated to suicide prevention. And, I really want to change that, because although I think that that's valuable, what are we doing on the front end here? Where are there why don't we have a page dedicated to mental health support and coping mechanisms?
Absolutely.
Before we get to the crisis. You're right. It's it would be like OSHA, and I'm not, we're talking casually here, but it would be like OSHA just putting the hotline number up there and not having a regulation. It's we're just going to call when everything's going down. That's not how we should be working as safety professionals. So I'm trying to get on the front end, on the cusp of this, right? It's here. We're human. We have feelings. We have to manage our work and life, our quality of life, our just everything that we have going on. And I think that our industry is ready for it. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at this Safety and Health magazine from the National Safety Council. And, there's words in here let me find one. It's human and organizational performance. They're talking about the future of safety, talking about how COVID has really brought emotional and mental health to the forefront. And I'm wow, if we're publishing this in, places like this for people to see, I think we're ready to actually start talking about now what we're going to do about it. And I want to be part of that. What are we going to actually do about it? How do we get a company who's ready for it to roll it out?
Oh man, I love that. I think you're right. In our industry has been recently talking about this, but I mean, you could tell by my surprised face that I haven't seen any companies do much about it yet. And we don't have a lot of examples set forth in front of us of here's what you can exactly do about it. I mean, shoot, you said insurance, for listeners, your insurance provider is your first step. And Absolutely. I'm thinking how interesting that our insurance agents haven't reached out to us as employers, and how come our clients haven't been notified by their insurance providers saying, hey, we have these resources, and surely that's not the insurance broker. It's not their insurance provider's job to explain every service, but it's just not that commonly talked about. So it's really interesting. Yes, this industry expert was just really talking about how guys might not want to look like, hey, I'm broken. Hey, I need help. And the hesitancy might be, am I being judged? Am I telling information that this is going to be used against me if I'm saying, hey, my job is so stressful right now. Are these notes being taken? That's the next week I'm going to be told I'm getting demoted because obviously I divulged to the counselor that my job is too hard. I'm saying those things. So he's there's so many questions on the worker side. He said, I could see, but he's man, the stress that sometimes the breadwinner, male or female, who is carrying is just so mighty, and it's so strong. But I love, the way that you've seen companies execute it right now, are you saying that their employer provides them employee resources like counseling? And am I saying that right? Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very early, the companies that I am seeing invest any kind of effort into it. It's still very early, but I want to congratulate them and, not underestimate the work that they're trying to do, or even speaking with upper management and leaders who at least understand and are starting to have those one-on-one conversations about what they can do, to normalize it and to help out. what I'm trying to, put together is a like a resource kind of how to step by step, with specifically this mind body mindfulness as it pertains to safety and risk in the workplace. But I think just having educational content around it and dripping it, to your staff is a really good place to start, because then instead of somebody thinking, you know, all of the thoughts basically that you said, because realistically, everybody has those thoughts around something.
I agree.
You're educating them first and then opening the door for further conversations. So, I mean, there are a million ways you can go about this. There are all kinds of things around, emotional intelligence, all of these soft skills that we're discussing as far as like employee interactions, anger management, all of that stuff. But I think the problem is a lot of it is old, it's outdated, it doesn't affect the generations that we're speaking to. And it's just like, it's got a stigma. Like, let's face it, nobody wants to be the one who's overwhelmed. Like, we all will talk about it at the water cooler, but nobody wants to be the one to be like, this is too much for me. And then the sad part is, we've all either been victim of or know somebody who has, that these pressures follow us into all of our areas of life. And maybe it's not work, maybe it's our family life coming into work. It doesn't always have to be that work's the stressful place, but before long, everything's sabotaged because we're not self-aware enough to cope with, we're not self-aware and educated enough to cope with what we're dealing with. And it's just a matter now of doing what we're doing, opening up the conversation, getting some really practical educational resources out there, and then seeing what we can do. But to answer your question, it's like the people who are doing it now, some of them are investing in like one-on-one mentorship for emotional intelligence. Some of them are looking into that I've worked with into their employee assistance programs, because a lot of that's already included. Some of them have partnered with local, practices and things like that. We're actually hosting a clay shoot on November 9th. If you were closer, I would totally have you guys.
Oh my gosh. Dang it.
I know. But we're partnering with the Appalachian Trauma and Resiliency Center there in West Virginia, which is really close to me. And I met this woman a few weeks ago at another event. They work a lot with vets and first responders, but she's willing to use the proceeds from this event to dedicate specifically to oil and gas workers and resilience training for them, so we can open up some slots for these people to go and be seen under the grant money, if they feel the need, or who knows, maybe we end up developing something, with her that's very specific to what we're doing. But we have so many ways to serve people and help people and talk about this. And it's only going to make us as businesses, like for the people listening who are like, well, where's the money? It's like, it's only going to make us all happier, healthier, which makes us more profitable, more safe, makes things run more smoothly. There's no like negative part of this I can't find it. It just makes us better people, which makes us better workers and better wives and sisters and husbands and all of the other things.
Absolutely. I think that you're right. Always going back to, this is all connected. Whether, when we're fulfilled and we're happy and know we're never going to be 100% that way all the time. But maybe if we had tools, these educational coping mechanisms on how to deal with stress, period, that will always affect our personal life, our business life, and just how we show up, because we're humans. And I think that this is also valid. And how amazing is it that there's already some talk and some execution on donating specific resources to oil and gas workers for example, this clay shoot and this trauma and resilience team, or just these people dedicated to this cause.
Right.
And recognizing it and doing something about it is incredible. When you are talking about educational resources, so we talked about how counseling facilities, that might be one option. That's like one thing that an employer can do. First step might be reaching out to your insurance provider, seeing what kind of employee assistance programs there are there. What do you have brainstorming? Because I know you're an innovator. I know you're thinking of things, and you just mentioned so many times, you're like, I want to help develop educational resources that employers can take to their employees today. What does that look like? Even if it's not developed yet, what are some things that you're working on that you think would help employees today?
So I'll preface it by saying I want to be very careful as somebody who is an in-house safety person, and you were too. You were an in-house safety rep. And then, we both have experience as consultants, and we're already talking about kind of like this overlap in management. I want to be clear that I feel like just like safety is its own animal, this is too. So I really feel like if someone's called and ready to move forward and rolling something out, that they really dedicate a resource, a person, or partner with somebody who actually knows what they're trying to do here. You do not want to overwhelm your safety people or HR people by then being like, okay, now we're going to do this whole thing for our organization, because it's just not going to work.
That's a great disclaimer right there for people listening. Like, this is my job to find the...
Exactly.
Okay. So
exactly.
That's
so
good.
I would say, that like, that's just what I want to start with. But by the time this recording airs, we should be able to drop a link for this. I'm going to finalize kind of like an introduction video of my plans for mind body safety. And then I'm actually creating fact sheets. So if you're a safety professional, you know what an OSHA fact sheet looks like, or a quick take card. It's a very fast, like, hey, here's the Reader's Digest of 1910-146. You know what I mean? Instead of us diving into the whole thing. And I'm going to do my best from my experience and partnering with other professionals, in mental health, psychology, and organizational behavior and things like that, to really just water down what a lot of these words mean. So what organizations decide to do with it at this point is kind of going to be up to them. I'm going to make it a free resource, but I'm going to work it into a path for companies who do decide to commit to, working together and really starting to integrate this, superimpose this into their pre-existing systems.
I like that. I like starting with something that is a quick fact sheet to see, hey, we're not throwing another new huge program at you that you're going to have to implement. I mean, right away. Any change in the workplace, any change as humans, we need to start with a baby step and a quick fact sheet around why this is important can get companies, their brains to just start wrapping around this idea of, all right, mental health is important. Here's why. Here are some statistics, and here's maybe some little actionable items that we could start doing today. Oh, that's fantastic. Do you have one tip, from that fact sheet today? I know maybe by the time this airs, you'll be able to link it below, and it might be available for listeners.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, do you have, one piece of advice for employers that they could start taking action on today?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned this, actually a part of it in our first conversation. So if you hadn't watched it yet, maybe you guys catch that first part, but the slowing down, breathing, and being present. And those three things sound like very easy to do, but
they're not.
They're not.
But they're not. Yeah.
They're not. So just becoming more self-aware. And whenever I say self-aware, if that is even, new jargon, it's just slowing down to the point that you're in your body and you're paying attention to what your body's doing and what your mind's thinking, instead of this constant running. We're constantly on the phone, someone's yelling at us from the office. We're on our way to a safety meeting. We have a stack of papers that need copied. We're doing this, we're doing that. We're not breathing, we're not breathing properly. And we're just moving. And then before we know it, we don't even remember half of the day. So
yeah.
To your point with adding this robust program on top of everything else that already overwhelms us, that is exactly what I do not want to do here. I don't want to create anything that is going to add to the chaos. I think that something like this has to really be one-on-one, really has to be face-to-face, person to person. And people have to feel that compassion and empathy and witness it and be taught how to give it and receive it again, because we've just become so, especially in the workplace, we've just been groomed to keep it business. And that just doesn't fly.
Totally. Oh yeah, you're right.
It doesn't fly. It's people will leave and go somewhere else now because that's the world that we live in. You don't work the same place for 30 years anymore.
No.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. There's options. We have different options out there. We're not afraid to take the leap to do something different. I think you're right about that. And I love what you said that, going back to something simple and having self-awareness of if you're feeling stressed, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling overworked, whatever it is, to pause and to breathe and to monitor, what am I thinking? Because so many people, I feel like we think these thoughts are just in and out of our mind. We have no control over them, but we actually do have control over our thoughts. And we need to monitor what's going on in there and stop and let it be accepted in the workplace. Right. And I think one big thing that you kind of touched on right now is that a program like this won't be successful if it's a program that you're throwing into your safety, your existing safety program, like a hot work policy, you're throwing in your mental health policy. If you execute it like that, it's not going to work. You said that if and when the company's ready to roll something out like this, it has to be meaningful. There has to be intention. There has to be buy-in from leadership before you even think to implement something like this, because you're asking your workforce to, in a sense, be vulnerable in a way that they have never been taught to before. So you can't just say, here's our new mental health. That's how I'm kind of envisioning this. Right. Sometimes if it's the wrong way, that as safety professionals, like, yep, we got this new policy. We're stopping, we're breathing. Everybody get that? Like, let's sign off on this policy this is the new company policy. Let's sign it so I can put it in your employee file. I mean, that's how a lot of policies are executed in the workplace.
I do.
So I love the idea, if you're going to make this successful, you're going to have to go all in on it. Here's a question for you. You kind of mentioned this. We're talking about mental health, emotional intelligence. We're talking about the unseen hazards in the workplace. Do you feel like this is the safety professional's job? Or is this HR's job? What if it's a company that's too small and they don't have an HR person?
Right.
You kind of mentioned, and I didn't even think about this really.
Well, and I think that's in my safety experience, I mean, that's kind of my sweet spot, is serving companies that are on the smaller scale, who don't have in-house, safety professionals, who do not have, your HR person is the owner's wife,
sisters,
is doing payroll and admin and paying the bills and, all that stuff. So that's my sweet spot. And those are the companies I've always advocated for. But I think that they're also the companies that are so much more family-like, that you want to care about your people and provide for them and give them opportunities to be human, I guess is just the best thing to say. So I don't know if it matters how big or small the company is. I do understand that it's going to take an investment in time, which is, I'm coming from it as a standpoint of I am packaging something that can be rolled into what they're already doing, whatever it is, because it's an initiative. I mean, it's like Stop Work Authority, it's sure we sign off on that and it goes somewhere and it's documented, but we all own that. 10 years ago, there was no Stop Work Authority, at least in this region. I remember people like laughing, being like, stop work. Do you know what would happen if I did anything like that?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's evolved to this place where it's like, everyone knows what Stop Work Authority is. We all know that we're allowed to do it. We all know we're, obligated and we have the authority to do it. It's just, are we going to choose today to stop work and exercise that right? So that's what I'm thinking here is, it's not necessarily, we're going to educate people like we did with Stop Work, right? Like this is Stop Work Authority. You have the ability and the authority to stop work when you see something or feel something that's unsafe. We're tapping into those, like that requires you to tap into your feelings of being unsafe. And then are you going to say or do something about it? And that's that, it's just woven into everything. And I mean, mental and emotional health for me is the same thing. It's something we'll have to educate people on, make it normal. And then it's like, hey, it doesn't have to be weird or, like we're doing yoga in the morning. It can be like, we're all getting heated in this conversation and someone takes the authority to be like, you know what, Apolonia, nothing is getting done here. Why don't we all get up and take a lap and go get something to eat and come back and finish this, whatever we're doing. Or a couple of employees are having an altercation, whatever it is, it's just, or somebody's stressed. Are they going to have the support if they would sit there and say, you know what, I'm not really feeling well right now. I have to figure something out. Or you get a phone call on your way onto location and your kid or wife needs you. This is real life stuff. And it's not really, I feel like employees want to do what they want to do, but they're afraid to because they don't think that they're going to have their management support. So it's how do you weave that into your culture so that when you find out someone's been late to work, you don't immediately penalize them. Instead, you open a conversation and treat them like a human and, hey, is everything okay? What's wrong?
Everything, what's going on here and being understanding. And so we can wrap up with this. This kind of made me think down these thoughts is that you and I are on the same page about how important this is, the need for execution solutions around these issues, mental health, stress, anxiety, anger, depression in the workplace. We're passionate about finding solutions for this, right? What advice would you give to safety professionals listening right now that they know they're listening and they're like, yes, Bec, you're so right. I agree with you. I just need support on how to start the conversation at my workplace. What would you tell a listener if they're like, I agree with you. I have an old school leadership team. I have an old school boss. How do I bring up that I want to initiate something like this? Because what is the consequence when anger, depression, anxiety, when that all is left untreated? Oh, really quick, going on to this, the counselors that I was interviewing, they said, Apolonia, hands down, it's anger, depression, anxiety. They said these three things left untreated, we've seen that if they're left untreated and ignored, they lead to symptoms like dementia.
Absolutely.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah. I said, so you're telling me workers are out there seeing things that aren't even there. And they were like, yes, that like these it's like PTSD, Apollonia. They said these things are so severe and people are so thirsty and so deprived to talk to somebody and to be heard. They don't even need solutions. People are so I'm like, I know the consequence of this all, but if somebody's like, Bec, how do I get this conversation started in my workplace? How do I make it serious to my boss? What would you tell them?
So this is hard because you're going against the grain, not only professionally, but personally with you will trigger people.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Just because an owner might be like, I dealt with this. I didn't have mental health bullshit in my workplace and I just figured it out, Susie. So you need to figure it out too. And our workers just need to figure it out. Yeah. I can see that conversation.
So I think what I would say is I would bypass the conversation and I would just start leading by example. And, we talk about managing by walking around and just doing the right thing and just exuding whatever works for you. Because again, this isn't going to really work if it's a policy that has to be implemented and I don't believe that. I believe it has to come from your heart. It has to be demonstrated. This isn't going to be a very quantifiable thing, at the beginning. So we have to realize, safety is hardly quantifiable. We're always trying to justify what we're doing out here, So I would just say that I think the best thing that somebody could do is to just maybe reach out to somebody that they can get some resources. I'm surely always open and willing to discuss this with other people. And then to just start doing it, to just start treating people better, to start moving a little slower, to start, taking time away from the computer. Like I wrote this down the other day. The companies I've worked for have probably gotten the best return on investment out of me when I was out with people. Get away from the computer, put down the phone, stop talking about, what we're doing wrong. Let's get out there and converse, and communicate and connect. And connect.
What I hear you saying is
connect. And then you're not going to need to ask for permission to roll something out because you're going to start to see that pulse come back into I've been using words like organizational health and the pulse of your team. Let's make it less systematic and stale. And let's talk about the health of our company, not our policies or profits. Let's talk about the pulse on our team. Doesn't matter if we're making a bunch of money, if we're all like dead inside in there.
Oh my gosh, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So get that momentum rolling, get that pulse going, and you'll start leading by example, and other people are going to wonder what's going on. I think you'll see results that way, at least at the beginning, until we can get a foundation that you can, begin to build from.
I didn't even dream of an answer as great as that. I mean, holy smokes, because I know the owner that I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like that persona of the owner. And I'm thinking, and I know you do too. So I love what you just said, because that would work. If you what I heard you say was, you bypass that conversation and you start implementing these things by leading by example. You start connecting with your workers on a different level. You start the change, and then employees, the workplace, the health of the organization increases by just this much more because you care this much more. And then that will be seen. And at that time, then you can go to the owner and say, hey, here's what I've been up to these last couple months. Here's what I've been up to. This is what we've seen change. And can we officially do this? Or can we provide a resource? Can we bring in our insurance agent to see what kind of employee assistant programs there are? But by us doing these things organically, it's already changed. So leading with that, and that's all free. You're right. I mean, that's something that we could do. We could control today. I love it. Oh my gosh.
We could go on for days.
Dropping the mic.
Part 3 coming soon.
I love it. And I love that. Okay. Well, there it is, guys. Again, another amazing episode with Bec here. I'm so grateful for the conversation. And by the time this podcast launches, we'll hopefully have a link provided by Bec, who can give you a resource of, you're right. All of us have seen an OSHA quick task sheet, and we'll be able to see something on this mental health side, on this organizational health side. And I love it. Thank you so much. You're an innovator, you're a thought leader. And everyone, just, if you're not already, please follow Bec so you can get the latest and greatest on these topics. So any final thoughts, Bec?
Thank you. I love it. Glad I could be here.
We're going to have to do a part 3, everyone. Sorry. We're just going to every few months, we're just going to have to touch base on this, because this is such an evolving conversation and we're on the breaking edge of it. And so people they're like, can't stop now. We need to pick your brain further. So awesome. Well, great. Follow us for more, everyone. Follow Bec, and thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.